The great hall of the Galactic Assembly shone with cold silver light. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the vast chamber, each one representing their mighty empires. Tall reptilian warriors with scarred armor stood proudly beside insectoid diplomats, their wings clicking softly. Energy beings shimmered like floating lights. All of them had come together to watch the newest species invited into the assembly, humans. But instead of welcome, there was laughter. At the center of the hall stood the alien diplomat, Lady Saraxa. She was tall, with glowing violet eyes and scales that reflected the light like jewels. She carried herself like a queen, every step slow and filled with arrogance. Her voice cut through the chamber as she raised a hand. "These humans," she said, her tone dripping with disdain, "are nothing more than clever animals. They crawl out of their small blue planet, build crude machines, and dare to stand here among us? This is an insult to the assembly." The alien crowd roared with laughter. Some clapped their claws together, others hissed in approval. For them, humanity was still young, still weak, still too small to matter. But one human did not laugh. He stood among his people, calm and quiet. His name was Marcus. Unlike the generals and politicians at his side, he wore no medals and no grand robe. He simply stood there with his hands folded, his face unreadable. While others burned with anger at the alien's words, Marcus remained still, as if he was waiting. Lady Saraxa turned her glowing eyes to him. She smirked. "And you, human, why do you not speak? Have your kind already accepted their place, beneath us?" A hush fell over the chamber. Cameras hovered above, broadcasting every moment to the galaxy. Billions of eyes were watching. Humanity's pride, its honor, rested on what would be said next. Marcus finally moved. He lifted his head, his eyes locking with hers. His voice was soft, steady, and filled with something the aliens could not understand. "Perhaps it is not we who should be careful. Perhaps the galaxy is not ready for what humanity will become." The chamber froze. It was not a threat shouted, in rage. It was not a weak attempt to defend his people. It was calm, quiet, but heavy like the weight of a storm. The alien diplomat narrowed her eyes, but for the first time a flicker of doubt touched her proud face. The laughter in the chamber slowly died. Still, Lady Saraxa would not allow her pride to be shaken. She leaned closer, her voice sharp. "You speak like a predator, human, but you are nothing but prey. I could crush you with a word. You are small, fragile, temporary. Do you think one human can stand against me?" Marcus did not answer right away. He allowed the silence to grow, allowed every delegate in the chamber to lean forward, waiting for his reply. Finally, he spoke. "Sometimes," he said, "it only takes one human." Her smirk returned, but it was weaker now, forced. She turned, away with a dramatic wave of her hand. "Enjoy your time in the stars, little human. Your species will not last long." The assembly erupted once more in cruel laughter, but something had changed. The human did not look defeated. He looked patient, like a hunter waiting for his prey to stumble. When the session ended, humans were mocked, pushed aside, treated like guests who had overstayed their welcome. But Marcus remained calm. In the corner of the hall, he saw Lady Saraxa being surrounded by admirers from other alien empires. They praised her words. They celebrated her arrogance. She basked in their attention, believing herself untouchable. Marcus studied her carefully. She was powerful, yes. Respected, yes. But beneath all of that, he saw the cracks. Pride was her armor, and pride could be broken. As the humans prepared to leave the assembly, one of his fellow diplomats whispered, "Marcus, why didn't you fight back harder? Why didn't you defend Earth?" Marcus's calm gaze remained on the alien diplomat across the room. His lips curved into the faintest smile. "Oh, I will defend Earth," he said softly. But not with words. His companion frowned, confused, but Marcus said no more. That night, the alien city glittered with neon towers that reached the clouds. Alien ships moved like glowing insects across the skies. The assembly delegates celebrated with feasts, music, and wild performances. Marcus walked through the city streets alone. His eyes were always searching, scanning, waiting, and then he saw her, Lady Syraxa, surrounded by her guards, stepping into a private chamber. Her laughter echoed, cruel and arrogant as always. For most humans, her presence was terrifying. But Marcus saw something else. He saw opportunity. The galaxy thought humans were weak. The assembly thought Earth had no teeth. Lady Syraxa thought she could mock humanity and remain untouchable. Marcus planned to prove them all wrong. He knew revenge would not come through warships or armies. Not yet. Humanity's fleets were still young, still small, but revenge could come in another form, one that no alien could predict, one that no assembly law could stop. And so Marcus began to plan. He would get close to Lady Syraxa. He would break her arrogance not with weapons, but with something far more personal, something that would strike her pride where it was weakest. In the shadows of the alien city, Marcus whispered to himself, "You wanted to treat humans as animals. Now you will learn what happens when the prey bites back." And as the neon lights reflected in his eyes, a dangerous calm spread across his face. This was not just about one insult. This was not just about pride. This was the beginning of humanity's revenge. The night after the assembly, Marcus sat alone in his quarters. The city outside glowed with alien lights, but his mind was sharp, focused. He had not come to this world to simply argue or beg for respect. He had come with a different purpose. Every insult Syraxa had spoken burned in his memory like fire, and he would not let it go. He replayed her words in his mind. Humans are nothing but clever animals. The arrogance in her voice, the laughter of the crowd, the way she smirked when she believed she had won. Marcus clenched his fists, but his face remained calm. Anger alone would not bring victory. Revenge required patience, planning, and a strike, where the enemy least expected. Syraxa believed she had full control. She believed no human could reach her level. That belief was her weakness. Marcus decided he would get close to her, closer than anyone else ever had. He would step into her guarded circle and strike, not with weapons, but with something far more dangerous. The next morning, the alien city was alive with activity. Merchants shouted in a dozen languages, ships rose and fell through the sky lanes, and alien soldiers patrolled the shining streets. Marcus walked among them quietly, studying everything. He watched Syraxa's palace from afar. High towers of black crystal reached the clouds, guarded by armored warriors with glowing spears. No human was allowed near without permission, but Marcus was patient. He began small. He spoke to the servants who worked around the palace. He shared Earth's food with them, told them stories of human endurance, human creativity, human resilience. Slowly, whispers spread. Not all humans were weak. Some were clever. Some were dangerous. He made sure those whispers reached the palace. Days later, during a grand banquet hosted by Syraxa, Marcus received an unexpected message. A servant bowed before him. "The lady has invited you to her hall," the servant said, his voice trembling. "She wishes to see for herself if humans are truly as arrogant as the rumors claim." Marcus smiled faintly. The trap had opened its first door. Inside the palace, the air was heavy with perfume and power. Alien nobles lounged on golden couches, their eyes glowing with strange colors. Music drifted from crystal instruments, filling the chamber with haunting tones. And at the center, seated on a throne of silver, was Lady Syraxa herself. Her violet eyes glowed as she studied Marcus. "So," she said with a cruel smile, "the little human dares to enter my hall. Tell me, Marcus of Earth, do you tremble in my presence?" Marcus bowed slightly, but his voice was calm. "I do not tremble before arrogance. I only bow before wisdom. The question is, do you have it?" The hall went silent. Nobles hissed, shocked at his boldness. Some expected Syraxa to strike him down at once, but instead she laughed. A long, cold laugh that echoed through the chamber. You are brave, human, foolish but brave, perhaps too foolish to live long. Marcus met her gaze without fear, or perhaps too patient to die easily. Something in his eyes unsettled her. She leaned back in her throne, studying him more closely. For the first time, she saw not just a human, but something deeper, something dangerous. That night, Syraxa summoned Marcus privately. Her arrogance remained, but curiosity had begun to grow in her. She wanted to test him, to see if he was truly as fearless as he appeared. You are unlike other humans, she said, circling him slowly. They bow, they beg, they fear us. But you stand firm. Tell me, Marcus, do you believe yourself my equal? Marcus answered carefully, each word chosen like a blade. Not your equal. Something far worse for you. Your reckoning. Her eyes narrowed, but instead of striking him, she laughed again. Reckoning? Do you plan to conquer me, human? With your tiny ships and weak armies? Marcus tilted his head slightly. His voice was quiet, steady. Armies are not needed to break a single queen. Her laughter faltered. For a heartbeat, silence filled the chamber. She wanted to dismiss his words as foolish, but the calm in his tone made her uneasy, and that was his weapon. Not force, not violence, unease. Over the following weeks, Marcus allowed himself to be drawn into her games. She invited him to feasts, where she mocked him before her nobles. He answered with clever words that left them uneasy. She tested him with dangerous trials, expecting him to fail, but each time he endured. When she tried to break his spirit, he bent but never shattered. The more she tried, the more fascinated she became. And the more fascinated she became, the closer he drew. What Syraxa did not see was the trap tightening around her. Every word, every encounter, every test was part of Marcus's plan. He was not simply surviving her arrogance. He was feeding it, guiding it until her pride would blind her completely. And when that blindness was complete, he would strike. One evening, as the alien city slept, Marcus stood on the palace balcony, watching the stars. Syraxa approached him, her presence heavy, her pride shining as always. You still stand tall, she said softly. Even here, surrounded by my power. Do you not fear me, human? Marcus turned his gaze to her, calm as ever. I do not fear you. I wait for you. Her lips curled into a faint smile, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of confusion. For the first time, she could not read him, and Marcus knew. His plan was working. This was no longer just about one insult in the assembly. This was about showing the galaxy that humanity could not be mocked without consequence. This was about striking at the heart of arrogance and leaving a scar that could never heal. As Syraxa left him that night, Marcus whispered to himself under the stars, Revenge is not taken in anger. Revenge is taken in silence, until the scream comes. The scream was coming, and the galaxy would hear it. The alien palace was alive with firelight and music. A great celebration had begun, another treaty signed, another victory claimed by the powerful empires of the galaxy. For Lady Syraxa, it was yet another stage to show her dominance. She stood at the center of the hall, cloaked in shimmering silks, her violet eyes glowing with pride. But among the guests, one figure did not kneel. Marcus. The lone human stood quietly at the edge of the chamber, calm as ever. He had been present at every gathering, every feast, every negotiation. At first, he was nothing more than a curiosity to Syraxa, a strange animal daring to play at politics. But the longer he remained, the harder he was to ignore. She told herself. She tolerated him only for entertainment. She told herself she allowed him near because mocking him gave her amusement. Yet when she looked across the chamber and saw him standing so still, so certain, her smile faltered for the first time that evening. Later that night, when the celebration ended and the nobles returned to their towers, Syraxa found herself restless. Her mind should have been on her victories, her power. Instead, it kept circling back to the human, Why did his eyes remain so steady? Why did he never beg? Why did he never break? No matter how she tested him, she summoned him again. The chamber was dark, lit only by glowing crystals that pulsed like living hearts. Marcus entered without hesitation. His steps were slow, measured, but his presence filled the room. "You continue to amuse me," Saraxa said, her voice smooth and sharp. "I have humiliated you before your people, yet you return again and again. Why?" Marcus's answer was simple. "Because I am patient. Because I know what happens when arrogance blinds the powerful." Her lips curled into a smirk. She circled him like a predator circling prey. "And what happens, human? Do you think you can wound me? Do you think you can change what I am?" Marcus turned his head slowly, his calm eyes never leaving hers. "I don't need to change what you are, I only need to show you what I am." The words hung heavy in the air. Something in his tone made her heartbeat quicken, not with fear but with an emotion she could not name. For weeks she had tested him. For weeks he had endured her games. But now she realized that every step she had taken had not broken him. It had drawn him closer. She had allowed him inside her guarded walls. And somewhere in the shadows of her pride, she felt trapped by her own curiosity. That night, the impossible happened. The arrogant alien diplomat, who had mocked and insulted humans before the galaxy, found herself alone with the one human she could not bend. His silence weighed more than her laughter. His calm carried more force than her anger. And for the first time in her long life, she made a mistake. She let her guard down. What happened in the shadows of that chamber was something she would never admit to her people. Pride told her she was untouchable, but her actions told another story. Weeks later, the palace whispered with rumors. Lady Saraxa had withdrawn from public view. Her temper had grown shorter, her eyes burned with strange fire. Servants whispered that she no longer mocked the human as before. Something had changed. And then, the truth struck like a meteor. Lady Saraxa was with child, not by any noble of her race, not by any suitor from the powerful empires, but by a human, by Marcus. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Whole empires whispered in shock. How could the proud diplomat, who once declared humans as animals, now carry the child of one? When the truth reached the assembly, the chamber that once roared with laughter now boiled with outrage. Some shouted for her removal. Others demanded the child be destroyed, but no one could ignore the truth. Saraxa, the untouchable, the arrogant, the cruel, had been undone. Inside her palace, her fury raged like a storm. She shattered furniture, tore banners from her walls, and screamed until her voice broke. She hated Marcus for what he had done. She hated herself for allowing it. But above all, she hated the silence in his eyes, the calm, patient silence that told her this had always been his plan. She confronted him at last, her violet eyes blazing with rage. "You planned this," she hissed. "From the beginning, you set this trap. You dared to make me carry your spawn, your revenge." Marcus did not flinch. He stood tall, his voice steady. "You mocked my people before the galaxy. You called us animals. Now you carry proof that humans are more than you ever believed. That proof will live long after your laughter dies." Her claws trembled. For the first time in her life, Lady Saraxa, the proud voice of her empire, had no reply. The galaxy would never see her the same way again. And Marcus knew. This was only the beginning. The news struck the galaxy like thunder. Across distant star systems, alien rulers argued in their palaces, soldiers muttered in their barracks, and citizens filled the streets with rumors. The proud diplomat, Lady Saraxa, was carrying a human child. For many it was unthinkable, for some it was disgrace, and for a few it was terrifying. If one human could bring down the arrogance of a galactic leader, what else were humans capable of? Inside her palace, Saraxa's fury became a storm. Her voice echoed through the crystal halls as she screamed at her guards, her servants, her advisors. She demanded silence, demanded loyalty, demanded obedience, but behind her fire, Fear crept into her heart. Everywhere she walked, she felt eyes on her. Whispers followed her steps. Once her presence commanded fear and respect. Now there was laughter hidden behind bowed heads. There was doubt behind every salute. Even her own people began to question, and Marcus was always there. He walked the halls calmly, his hands behind his back, his eyes quiet but sharp. He said nothing of his victory. He made no boasts, no threats. He only walked beside her, as if daring her to deny the truth. His silence was worse than any weapon. One night, Syraxa confronted him in her private chamber. Her glowing eyes burned with rage. "You have destroyed me," she shouted. "Do you think this makes your people strong? Do you think this child is a victory? It is a curse. My enemies will use it against me. My empire will never forgive me. You have doomed us both." Marcus stood still, his voice calm as ever. "You destroyed yourself. Arrogance blinded you. You mocked us as animals, but now you carry proof that we are more than animals. You wanted to crush us with pride. Instead, your pride became the weapon that broke you." She trembled with fury, her claws digging into the armrest of her throne. Part of her wanted to kill him, to erase the human who had humiliated her. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when the truth of the child had already spread across the stars. Killing him would not erase what had been done, and that made her rage even stronger. The assembly soon demanded her presence. Delegates from dozens of species gathered, their voices rising in chaos. Some demanded her resignation, some demanded punishment. Some called it a scandal that threatened the balance of the galaxy. When Syraxa entered the chamber, her head held high, her anger burning like fire, the crowd roared with accusation. Yet she stood tall, refusing to show weakness. She swore she was still in control, that the humans had not broken her. But her trembling voice betrayed the truth. And then Marcus entered. The chamber fell silent. The calm human walked with steady steps, his eyes meeting every alien gaze. For many of them, this was their first true look at the human who had done the impossible. He did not wear armor. He carried no weapon. Yet his presence was heavier than any army. He stood before the assembly and spoke in a steady voice. Humanity did not seek this. We asked only for respect. But when respect was denied, when we were mocked, when we were treated as less than life itself, we answered. And now the galaxy sees the truth. You may call us weak, but even in weakness, humanity cannot be broken. The chamber erupted in uproar. Some shouted that the humans were dangerous. Others whispered in awe. And in the center of it all, Lady Syraxa sat frozen, her claws shaking, her fury boiling. She could not silence him. She could not undo what had been done. The galaxy had seen her fall, and it was too late to rise again. Back in her palace, her fury turned inward. She struck at her mirrors, shattered her walls, tried to bury the whispers that followed her. But no matter what she destroyed, one truth remained: the child. The proof of her defeat, and Marcus never left her side. He did not gloat. He did not laugh. He only reminded her with his presence that humanity's revenge was complete. His silence became her torment, his calm her punishment. The more she hated him, the stronger his victory became. Yet deep within her fury, a new fear began to grow. What if the child was born strong? What if the child carried the resilience of a human and the power of her kind? What if this curse became something greater than either of them could imagine? For the first time in her long life, Lady Syraxa faced a truth she could not control. She had mocked humans as weak, but now she carried humanity's future within her own body, and Marcus knew it. As the alien city slept, he stood at the balcony once more, staring at the endless stars. Behind him, Syraxa's furious voice still echoed in the halls, but he smiled faintly to himself. This was no longer about revenge alone. This was about something far bigger. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and now, through her anger and her shame, they had been forced to see the truth. The consequences of her arrogance had only begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had changed. The story of Lady Syraxa and the human named Marcus spread across every star system. On trading ships and military outposts, in noble courts and slums, aliens whispered the same tale. A human had done the impossible. He had brought low one of the proudest diplomats of the assembly, not with fleets, not with weapons, but with silence, patience, and cunning. Some called it shame, others called it justice, but none could deny its power. In the heart of her palace, Syraxa sat alone on her throne. The fire of her fury still burned, but the weight of her situation pressed heavier than iron chains. She had mocked humanity before the galaxy, and now her own body carried the proof of her defeat. She had always believed herself untouchable, above all weakness. Now she felt trapped by her own arrogance. When Marcus entered, her violet eyes blazed. "Are you satisfied?" she spat. "You have taken my pride, my power, my future. Does this amuse you, human?" Marcus stood before her calmly, his hands folded as always. "This was never about amusement," he said softly. "It was about truth. You called us animals, but now the galaxy knows we are more. They will never forget what you carry inside you." Her claws dug into the throne. She wanted to strike him, to destroy him. But the calm in his eyes held her like a chain. She realized then that she had not trapped him. He had trapped her. The assembly soon summoned them both. The chamber overflowed with delegates. Voices rose in chaos. Some demanded the child be destroyed. Others argued it must be protected as a symbol of alliance. And some, whispering with fear, wondered if this child was the beginning of something greater. Marcus stepped forward. His voice carried across the hall, calm yet unshakable. "You laugh at humans. You call us weak. Yet one human has shaken your assembly. One human has broken your pride. If one man can do this, what do you think a united Earth can achieve? Remember this before you mock us again." The silence that followed was heavy. No one dared laugh this time. No one dared dismiss him as a joke. For in his words they felt the echo of something dangerous, something inevitable. Lady Syraxa's fury boiled. She wanted to roar, to deny, to crush him with words. But when she rose to speak, her voice trembled. The assembly saw her weakness and the humiliation deepened. That night, in the quiet of her chamber, she confronted Marcus one last time. "You have won," she admitted bitterly. "You have destroyed everything I built. But tell me, human, was it worth it? You may have broken me, but the galaxy will hate you for it. They will fear you. They will watch your kind with suspicion. Is that the legacy you want for your people?" Marcus stepped closer, his eyes steady. "Fear is not the worst legacy. Fear means respect. Fear means they will think twice before they insult us again. And when they see the child, they will remember forever that no empire, no queen, no diplomat is untouchable when they face humanity." Her breath caught, rage and something else flickering in her gaze. She wanted to deny his words, but deep inside she knew he was right. The galaxy would never look at her or at humans the same way again. Months passed. Whispers of the unborn child spread like wildfire. Some alien empires prepared weapons, fearing what might come. Others sent emissaries, hoping to align with Earth before it grew stronger. In every corner of the galaxy, humanity's name was spoken with new weight. And Marcus? He remained calm, silent, always one step ahead. He knew this was not just his revenge. This was the spark of something much greater. Humanity had been mocked, belittled, treated as prey. But now the predators hesitated. Now they looked over their shoulders, remembering one man who had turned arrogance into chains. When the time came, Lady Syraxa stood again before the assembly. But this time there was no laughter. Her once proud figure trembled, her eyes dark with fury and shame. And beside her, calm and unbroken, stood Marcus. The galaxy watched as the proud alien bowed, not out of respect, but out of necessity. She could not deny what had happened. She could not erase the truth. And in that moment, humanity triumphed. Not with fleets, not with weapons, but with a single man who refused to bend. The assembly would remember it for centuries. The story of the arrogant alien diplomat who mocked humans, and the human who answered with silence and patience until she carried his child. The story of the moment the galaxy first learned what humanity truly was, a storm waiting in silence. And as Marcus left the chamber that day, his voice echoed one last time. Never underestimate a human. Not ever again. The galaxy would never forget.